Hey friends, this recording's going to be a little bit different. Rather than whispering, today I want to read you a Dharma glimpse I wrote back in May, a few months ago. Let's see how well it holds up 3 months later. Some of you might know that I was inducted as a lay minister with Bright Dawn Center of Oneness Buddhism back in May. And this was a Dharma glimpse that I wrote as part of the training program. And I feel like it's worth sharing. So I titled it The Freefall of Uncertainty. These are difficult times in so many ways on multiple fronts. Personal health, public health, financial security, social outlets, and spiritual connection. We are living day to day with so many questions unable to be addressed to our satisfaction. For some of us, this results in compulsively checking news sites or social media. For others, it might be in checking out via shows or Zoom gatherings or online yoga classes or substances. Yet others might be falling into familiar realms of anxiety, depression, insomnia. This is a trap for many who have done diligent work in changing their narrative and habits. This strange new terrain of living through a pandemic, of physical isolation, or of intense fear around going about your work, if you're lucky enough to have been deemed essential. How do we maintain a balanced perspective, retain the presence of mind to use the tools we have cultivated in sidestepping habitual pitfalls, to manage the homeschooling and housekeeping and regulating our own well-being at the same time? How can we hold this grief, this fear, this panic, this dismay, all of these questions? In times such as these, when I feel in a state of free fall, I am reminded of a quote from Chogyam Trungpa, a venerable teacher of Tibetan Buddhism in the Vajrayana tradition. The bad news is you're falling through the air, nothing to hang on to, no parachute. The good news is there's no ground. There is no ground, people. What are we fearing? The lack of control while we fall? Or the reality that at some point there is a solid ground for us to smack into? Take away that final collision point, and perhaps the free fall is not as fearsome as we thought. Not having control in the world flying past us, not being able to grab onto a rope, knowing that there is no circle of firefighters holding a trampoline to soften our landing. Those are definitely scary thoughts. But if there exists no ground upon which to shatter, might we learn to relax into the very uncertainty in which we find ourselves? What a liberating thought. However, we can recognize that it is a struggle to find ease while we fall through space, out of control, subjected to fate and circumstance. Truly, there is much to fear and worry about in these times, but I am reminded by this practice of Buddhism that the reality of being alive has always included death as two sides of one coin. In the book Bright Dawn, Reverend Kubose poses the question, how can one live in the midst of such existential anxiety, yet stand above it? Part of his answer is to look up at the sky, take a wide view. And I think this can be both horizontally and vertically, especially when it feels like the bottom has fallen out, when your stomach sinks with some new dread-inducing news report. That spaciousness can really help to shift the visceral response. In the same chapter, he writes in a letter to his son, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Look up and let that bigness, that vastness, widen your mind and heart. Beyond the duality of empty and full, the vast emptiness of the sky mirrors the absolute emptiness that goes beyond all conceptual dichotomies such as life, death, or good, bad. When the truths of impermanence and interdependency are realized, a life of acceptance and appreciation opens up." Wow, I wish my own dad had access to those words for me in an inspired moment of poetic teaching. Nevertheless, I can appreciate my father's kindness and compassion as I am sheltering in place with him to help shield him in his vulnerable elderly state from the outside world. It would be so easy to fall into patterns of resentment and irritation since we haven't spent time with anyone else except my teenage son, now for over a month. And now, upon this reading, for 6 months. But we have all, to the best of our abilities, cultivated the fine art of giving each other space, even within a confined area. We recognize our interdependency, and with the current state of mortal fear, the impermanence of this moment, as well as our lives, has allowed us to accept and appreciate each other. I'm sure that is something you are all working on with those with whom you are sheltered. Zooming out and gaining that wider perspective have been the key to remembering to be kind to each other. That in itself is a type of poetry, skillfully acting consciously to hold space for each other, to be human together. That same skill of widening your perspective is key right now, not just in the interpersonal relationships, which feel inescapable these days, but in how we relate to the information and media that we consume and how we experience our emotions in our bodies as they arise. When your stomach drops or tightens, and that sense of uncontrolled free-falling arises, let's remember there is no ground. We can skillfully look to the sky, take a walk, shift our focal point. One tool often used for anxiety is when that feeling creeps up and your breath starts to shallow, your chest tightening, to consciously feel the contact with your body with something real. Your feet on the floor, your hands on your teacup, your back against the chair. Touch in to what is tangibly present, ground into physical experience. When I ask myself, what is real that I can touch? What is available to me that is as solid as stone? I am reminded of the Dharma rock at the campus of the Bright Dawn Center, and this is a huge boulder with a plaque on it, inscribed with a poem which is called "The Dharma is My Rock." And one line out of that poem is, "Stone therapy helps me see the suchness of all things." Truly, the Dharma can be that real thing that we can root into, our grounding rod, you might call it. Those teachings that have been preserved and passed down for generations to instruct us in how to experience suffering in the most useful way, no matter your religious orientation. These teachings are about the experience of being human and in this moment, providing a skillful way to respond with discernment to the inevitable challenges. In terms of navigating these challenges, the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism and its prescription of skillful or right view, intention, action, livelihood, speech, etc. This provides a very good tool to help us navigate these difficult waters. I like to envision it as the steering wheel on our ship, If we adhere to the principles, we will chart a course through the most treacherous waters with our morality intact and our highest values affirmed. Many people have commented recently that we should not go back to business as usual. When you see how the earth is healing a bit from less industrial activity, truly this feels like a reckoning. What stands up and affirms our collective values? What deserves to fall away with the pandemic? It is interesting to see how religious communities have been affected. I think Bright Dawn was a trailblazer in this regard. So many churches and temples are finding that people really can find that beloved community through Facebook Live services and Zoom coffee hours. There is much room for transformation into more sustainable ways of worship and togetherness. At Bright Dawn, we've always connected remotely because the programs are tailored to bringing together people from all over the country and all over the world to study the Dharma together. And my group had been going for 2 years, meeting every Sunday virtually. So we were already accustomed to connecting spiritually via phone calls and online. So this hasn't hampered our growth in terms of spirituality. If anything, so many more opportunities have opened up as congregations are no longer limited by localities of space and time. What a concept. Let us be guided by our highest principles, specifically right livelihood and right effort, in healing from this pandemic in all ways, in creating a stronger and more equitable society. And when we feel that sense of personal and collective freefall, of uncertainty, let us remember there is no ground. When death draws close in whatever way, can we remember the vast sky's full emptiness, recalling that it is just the other side of life, not greeting it with fear, but with acceptance and curiosity. When anxiety and panic threaten to flood our nervous systems, let's recall that the Dharma is there as a rock to root into, a touchstone to connect us back into a state of flow and equanimity. Even if we cannot attend services in a shared building, we can still tap into that beloved community from wherever we are. These are the very real gifts that the Dharma and this Sangha in particular have given to us. Let's unwrap them and allow them to see us through this free-falling time. Thank you for listening. Gasho. Until next time.